Can we just take a moment to talk about how Boss Kratos opens chest? God, I love this guy. Today, we're going to go through some early game tips and tricks for God of War Ragnarok and things that you need to know, and I'll be avoiding as many spoilers as possible, so let's go. Okay, so as mentioned, I will be avoiding spoilers as much as possible. I'll be showing anything past the first two areas of the game or any story beats, any major bosses, anything like that, so you should be safe to watch this video. I'll probably be doing like a end game tips video that'll include some of the more spoilery things in the future. So let's talk about exploration tips first. Now, explore lots. That kind of goes without saying. It was the exact same in 2018, and if you are wondering, don't stress, there are no missable trophies. However, just because there's no missable trophies doesn't mean you shouldn't explore. Do the side content. There are plenty of gear upgrades and side stories and things you'll learn and just really cool experiences that you'll miss out on. And in some cases, you can't actually return to these realms until much later in the story. So you might forget about that side quest, what it was about, or just in general, like miss it. And there's tons of upgrades and things that'll make your journey much simpler in the long run if you do actually go and do them rather than wait until you come back. In most cases, Atreus or Mimir will be like, hey, we should go and explore now. And you can kind of know then that that's the point that you should do some exploring in that realm if you want to, rather than just go and continue the main story. Make sure you grab all the chests as well. They operate exactly the same as the 2018, especially the ones that require you to do the rune puzzles. There's also these new skag creatures that you can't kill from the front. You have to flank them or find a way to get behind them so they don't actually notice you. And when you do kill them, they drop a ton of resources. So if you do spot these bad guys in the wild, make sure you do stop them. And if you do miss any loot, like you've killed an enemy and you forgot to pick something up, next to the dwarf shop now, there is a chest that you can open that'll give you any loot that you may have missed. If you don't like to pick up loot or you just want to check some different things, go into the accessibility options. There are tons of things in here that can make your experience a little bit easier, like auto picking up health and rage items, or even just auto picking up everything, or even remapping some of your key bindings. Like I've changed my evade and jump or interact buttons because it feels better the other way than the typical way. But there is plenty of options in here if you do need some accessibility options or just want to make the experience a little bit simpler in some ways. Combat tips. Now, there is a new mechanic in Ragnarok that if you hold triangle with the axe or mash it with the blades, that you will trigger a elemental effect on that weapon. Now, elemental effects are significantly expanded in Ragnarok and they're much more important to use. The new triangle attack, once you do wind that up and then attack enemy, it will start that elemental build up on them, whether it's fire or frost. If you do trigger that effect and then switch to the other weapon, say you've triggered frost on them and then you switch to the blades of chaos, you'll deal extra fire damage to them and vice versa. So it's a great way to trigger additional elemental effects on enemies, not only to do the damage of the elemental effect, but also to do more damage when you switch to that other weapon, which you should be doing, and then attacking it with that weapon. Depending on the skills and different upgrades you get as well, you'll also be able to build those elemental effects with those skills and runic abilities, so you can increase those status effects and apply them to enemies, but just make sure you're paying attention to them. It's also worth mentioning to make sure you're carrying a resurrection stone at all time. If you do use one, make sure you go to the dwarf shop and grab one. Just like in 2018, the stun meter is critically important if you just want to one-shot enemies. You also don't take damage when you're in those animations as well. If you are trying to build up the stun meter on an enemy and you do have to retreat for a little bit, which don't be afraid to do so, Atreus can help continue that bar growing by using his just standard arrow attacks, can keep that going. It also does good damage as well, so it's definitely worth doing. Your bare fist attacks are probably the best way to increase that stun meter on enemies or hitting them against walls, so you then can trigger that effect where you can actually take them out. And you can also exploit the environment as well, which is separate to 2018, as most of the combat encounters now will have some sort of thing that you can interact with. It could be a pillar that you could pick up and throw at enemies, or a rock to do the same thing, or even other things that enemies might hang off that you can shoot at with Atreus. There's plenty of these and they're different depending on the realm you're in, and just make sure you're paying attention to the area around you, as these attacks can be very powerful and help you get out of situations that maybe are really difficult. It's just a good way to get out of those situations without too much pressure and just kind of push enemies away from you. And never be afraid to move away, because this game I've actually found is harder than 2018. 2018 is just kind of walking in the park until you get towards the end of the stages of the game, but Ragnarok assumes that you have some of that built-in knowledge from 2018 and some of the understanding of the mechanics, especially the fact that you get the blades and the axe pretty much from the start. So there's a lot of things that you may not remember from 2018, or if you haven't played 2018, so make sure you build up those mechanics and get better at the game. And there are situations later on where you'll be able to practice and train and spend time learning the intricacies of the combat, so that you get better, especially as you unlock some some more skills. Let's talk about unlocking those skills and upgrading Kratos and Atreus. Now, obviously, you want to upgrade your axe and blades. That's like obvious. It works exactly the same as in 2018. You don't have to do anything different here. Something that's new about skills is that you can actually disable them. So when you're looking at a skill and you do purchase that skill, you can press triangle to enable or disable it. You're only really going to use this if, say, the skill triggers some sort of animation that maybe you don't like, or you want to turn that off, or maybe Atreus has like a passive that he's doing that you don't want him to do that anymore. You can turn those off so that you aren't actually using that skill. But for the most part, you'll probably buy a skill and turn them all on, and make sure you are spending those XP points that Atreus and Kratos learn separately. They actually have to learn those points themselves. When you are looking at the shop, it's really important that you don't sell any of your gear, as every single piece of gear you have is upgradable to max level. This was not possible in 2018, but in Ragnarok, you can upgrade all of your gear. So even if you've moved on to something else, make sure you keep it, as maybe in the long run, like endgame, you might end up using it for some sort of a build. You can actually sell your collectibles instead, same as you could in 2018. It'll still count towards your collectible actual progress, but you can sell it to get yourself some more hack silver so you could purchase some kind of upgrade that you might be looking for. There's plenty of things to upgrade and spend on those crafting resources, and like we talked about in the exploration section, it's really important that you do spend that time exploring different areas and defeating the enemies and doing the side quests and side content, as you'll miss out on a ton of crafting upgrades and materials that you can use to unlock different pieces of gear, or even just upgrade the pieces of gear that you already have. But in the early stages, it's important that you have a rough idea what kind of a build you're looking for and what you want to focus on. There's two main stats. We'll go through all the stats in a second, but when you're thinking about what you should upgrade, you want to stick to one piece of gear or style of gear, because you'll run out of crafting materials pretty quickly if you try and upgrade everything at once. Strength and defense are the two main attributes that you want to focus on. Strength will increase your damage dealt with all attacks, including skills, and defense just decreases the incoming damage that you do receive from attacks. Now, pretty much every armor set is going to either focus on strength or defense, and then some of the secondary stats underneath that. But depending on if you want to be more of an offensive juggernaut, you'll probably want to focus on strength, and then obviously you want to be more of a tank, you'll focus on defense. Those secondary stats, there's 4 of them. The runic stat increases the power of your runic attacks and the elemental status effects, so the fire and frost attacks, or those special runic attacks that you can do, the same as in 2018. Vitality increases your max health and your stagger resistance, so when enemies hit you, how much you can resist the stagger. Luck increases your chance of getting rewards and activating chance abilities more often, and cooldown reduction reduces the wait time for those runic attacks to actually cool down, so you can then use them more often. If you are wearing a piece of armor that is hella ugly, which absolutely does happen, once you max out a piece of gear, like get its level up to level 9, you will unlock transmog, so you can change the way it does look. I hate the look of like these just like armor sets where he's like in that full armor. I love like the over the shoulder armor that Kratos has. So if you're like me, you absolutely love the fact that transmog is in Ragnarok, so you can change the way that your armor looks. That is it for the early game tips, guys. Get out there, beat up some guys. Let me know if you have any other tips of your own in the comments down below, so that we can all help each other out. If you do have any questions, or you'd like me to cover something specific in God of War, let me know that as well. Thank you for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.